Hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Um, we have got our two guests, Poena Le Roux and from Meeting Power and Zerlinda van der Merwe from TVDM Consultants. So thank you for joining us. While we just, getting started, I'm just going to quickly read through their bios. Okay, so Zerlinda graduated from the University of Stellenbosch with her BA, LLB, LM cum laude degrees, while completing her LLM thesis, specifically focused on the constitutionality of sectional title rules. After graduating, Zerlinda joined Pam Golding Property Management Services as a managing agent. Following this practical experience, Zerlinda completed her articles with Marina Constas at BBM Attorneys, followed by her appointment as a specialist community schemes consultant with Professor Graham Paddock at Paddock's. Zerlinda then went back to her roots as general manager of PGPMS before she co-founded TVDM Consultants. Poena Le Roux. Poena is a seasoned IT professional with over 35 years experience. In 1992, he founded a management consulting company and software development house, combining his expertise in technology and business strategy. Holding an MBA from Bond University and having completed various Paddock courses, Poena has been deeply involved in sectional title management for more than 2 decades. As an owner, trustee, and chairperson of a self-managed 50-unit complex, he has first-hand experiences with the challenges faced by community schemes. In 2017, Poena designed Meeting Power, an innovative platform integrating number and value voting, proxy management, immediate calculations of voting results, and e-voting, all within a seamless video call environment. Since its launch in August 2020, Meeting Power has been widely adopted by thousands of body corporates, homeowners associations, pension fund administrators, and companies, enabling efficient governance across thousands of meetings. The platform is now steadily expanding into international markets. Thank you. Enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, guys. I'm very happy to be joined by two friends in the industry. And I would think the two gurus on general meetings and annual general meetings. Zerlinda, with her in-depth knowledge of the rules of the Act, and Poena in respect of Meeting Pal, where they manage many meetings throughout South Africa. Welcome, guys, and we had a couple of slides as you guys will see, but we are generally just going to have a discussion about this and why it's important for people to partake in meetings and what happens if they don't partake in those meetings and what the consequences of that is. Thanks, you guys, for joining us. We really appreciate you guys being here. Zerlinda, you want to start with us on AGMs and what they are and why is it important? And Poena, then awesome. if you can jump in as well.
Cool. Sorry for my technical difficulties. I'm sorry. I'm actually at a managing agent's offices talking about annual general meetings in a little training session this morning. So I just switched over back to my phone because the hotspot wasn't working that lekker. So apologies from my side. So it's actually so fortuitous that the topic is the annual general meetings today because of our upcoming Let's Get Physical event in Cape Town, Willie and Poena. And, it's a topic that I never get tired of talking about. Not that I ever get tired of talking, but it's a topic that I think a lot of education is still needed. And while I was at this session this morning, something that came across very clearly is that the trustees and particularly the chairpersons are still not taking the role of chairing an annual general meeting seriously, in that they allow their portfolio managers to facilitate, they allow them to chair, they allow them to deal with the voting, the administration, the answering of questions and all of those fun things. And I think the point that I'd like to put across this morning is really the importance of the trustees taking ownership in annual general meetings, trustees in body corporates, HAAs, directors in HAAs as well, and being able to use this one opportunity opportunity that they have per year to actually engage with their owners and report back to the owners as well. So I think that's what I want to talk about specifically in annual general meetings. And from a legal perspective, we know that it happens obviously once a year within the first the first 4 months of the financial year in a body corporate, and then HA is very different according to the governance documents. I hope you don't mind if I start off like that.
No, absolutely. Let's go.
Cool.
I think
One
you're
of
right.
the Poena.
I see that quite often, to your point, where the trustees, and I don't know if it's whether they don't appreciate the volume and the assets that they're managing, the amount of money that's involved in that, and how serious the actual portfolio that they're looking at and managing is in terms of asset value.
Yeah, those numbers can be quite scary. I don't know if you guys remember that session that NAMA presented, where they gave a bit of I suppose a bit of a thumb suck on the total assets that are involved in the community schemes industry. It's interesting to look at it that way. Willie, you're in the numbers game or the financial game. I think you'd be able to put it across to members a lot more clearly than we'd be able to. But an annual general meeting, sometimes, in my opinion, just gets treated as one more legal compliance aspect. Tick, we've done the annual general meeting, and no serious thought is really put in it. It's just, okay, we need to get the financial statements running. We have to audit now because we put it off long enough, or we want to use the attendance at an annual general meeting to put through a special resolution or unanimous resolution without actually focusing on the business of annual general meetings. The really important things like the directives to the trustees, the restrictions to the trustees, the appointment of who the trustees are going to be. And I must say, quite strangely, when I go to an annual general meeting, the item that gets the least amount of attention from the owners, believe it or not, is the budget. And I don't know if it's because people don't understand it. By the time that it comes to the budget discussion, they're just a bit hurtful and they want to move on, or they're looking towards the special business, or they're wanting to rather decide who the trustees are going to be. But I very often, going to meetings, believe that the owners and the trustees are simply missing the point of annual general meetings, especially that feedback session to the members. And they're sometimes very stringent on what people can speak about at the annual general meeting. Like, if you don't send your queries to us 48 hours before, we're not going to be able to talk about it at the AGM. Very often the AGM is like that only opportunity for members to raise their issues.
Absolutely. And just to come back to values, from our point of view, on the analysis that we do of the industry and the industry size, we believe that there are annual levies being paid in sectional title schemes in South Africa somewhere between 60 and 80 billion rand per annum. So that is the amount of levies that are being paid or should be paid by owners. So, and that is just the start of it. And then like Poena says, the value of those assets, they are trillions of rands of assets. If you can think the value of a scheme, you've got 200 sections in a scheme, selling at 1.5 million each or 2 million each, then you can think how much money is out there. We're thinking currently there's somewhere between 100 and 120,000 sectional title schemes in South Africa. So yeah, a lot of money involved, and people need to take it seriously. Owners need to take it seriously. Owners need to understand their roles, their obligations, their rights, and they have to take part in an AGM. All three of us are on Sectional Title Living South Africa, on that platform on Facebook. And the amount of complaints that one reads on a daily basis of people that feel that managing agents or trustees or just other people are just doing as they please in schemes is just enormous. The amount of queries that needs to be answered in that respect. So definitely an AGM is that moment in time that you have your chance to actually change stuff for yourself and for the other owners in the scheme.
Yeah.
And allowing, like you said, allowing portfolio managers to just run through it. And obviously, portfolio managers have lots of schemes that they must manage, and they would want to get the meeting over as soon as possible because they're out almost every night. I would presume for if it's not a annual meeting or a general meeting, then at least a trustees meeting. So they're always busy. So they would want to get rid of those meetings as soon as possible. But owners need to interrogate the documentation, need to understand the budget, like you said. I was in a meeting, I think 2 days ago, and the managing agent led this meeting, and she went through the budget, and it's a very small scheme, 8 units with 4 owners, so each of them have multiple units. And the one owner just said, sorry, we're not going to approve the budget. We can't afford X% increase. And there's no consideration of what needs to be paid with this money. And I think people don't understand that. I mean, a budget is not just a thumbs up where you put a percentage on. It's based on things that are going to be paid and should be paid. And if you want to remove the item, then you're not going to pay for it, then you need to know which items you're going to remove. You can't just say, okay, we're not going to increase by 15%. We're only going to increase by 3% because that's what we can afford. But there's a consequence to that. And I don't think people necessarily understand that always.
But again, Willie, if you look at specifically then the budget items and how do you do the budget, we're also involved in quite a number of self-managed complexes where unfortunately they don't have the skills that the PMs would bring to the table in drafting a budget, looking at the last year's expenses and realistically looking at what's to come. To your point, everybody sit there and then they go like, no, we can't afford it. And then they don't realize that something's got to give. And all those people that do draft the budget are not savvy, and I say this with respect, enough to understand what's the impact of that, if they're going to run out of money. And only the budget itself is one thing, but you in the arrears side also need to take into consideration cash flow. A lot of managing agents and or trustees don't take into consideration just the whole issue of cash flow. So that, you know, they draft their budget, and then by August the expenses have depleted all their cash reserves, and then they go like, but how do we then maintain this? So it is an interesting aspect in terms of the general meeting having to look and approve the budget, but people don't have the insight in determining and understanding what's the impact on the long run.
Poena, you've got direct experience in the self-managed schemes, and I know that's why you became, invested in the industry, was your own personal investment in a scheme. You obviously attend a lot of meetings impartially and get asked to chair the meeting as well. From your perspective, like, what are the things that you think more emphasis should be placed on? And in your experience, what are the things that are seemingly small but get like completely blown out of proportion?
So it's interesting. I can classify 2 types of issues that we face. The first one is where people don't appreciate that the agenda is a set agenda, and that's the business at hand that needs to be dealt with. And what we also see within that then is where people, and Willie, I heard you in terms of, it's once a year you have the opportunity, but you must not turn this into a griping session or a snag list. Especially new developments, I always see the first couple of meetings becoming a snag list and a venting against developers. It should not be part of the AGM. I mean, they can discuss it if they bring it to the table, but it should not all of a sudden my geyser is not working, the plug is not working. Those are things outside of the scope of an AGM. The matter at hand should be, how do we manage the developer to complete a snag list, but it's not the individual items on the list. And then on the other side, the financials and even insurance. A lot of people don't appreciate and understand the difference between their market value of their building or their flat. You know, I'm taking an argument, you can sell your flat for R1 million, but the valuation comes out to 700,000 rand, so it's wrong. They don't appreciate that there's other mechanisms to take into consideration, the whole process of the replacement value versus the market value. And then if you're in a town or a borough on the Natal coast where they refer to levies that gets raised by the city council over and above the taxes, based on the value of your property. Now that is another set, so it becomes very difficult then to contain and to address that with the owners in terms of you've got your replacement value, you have your insurance around that, and you've got market value, and then you've got the municipal value that's also placed on it. So I think financials certainly is a big issue that a lot of people are missing, and then the whole process around how do we conduct a meeting, what's the purpose of the meeting, and what are the matters to the business is then to be dealt with. Zerlinda, to your point, I mean, they don't approve the budget. What do we do now? How do the new incoming trustees execute? Against what do they execute? They don't have, in terms of the act, they must execute against line items in the budget. So, okay, how are you going to do this?
And they haven't been authorized by the members. That's the whole point of the AGM. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I did not mean that it becomes a gripe session and this is your time to jump on people regarding their dog and so forth. Because I mean, the act is very clear and the rules are clear. What are those items that needs to be addressed at that AGM? So I was saying that that's your time to actually contribute to those items in respect, like the budget and the election of trustees, choosing the correct people, because that is such an important thing as well, making sure that the people that you choose to serve the scheme are actually people that have the interest of owners at heart and will act in accordance with their fiduciary duty. I mean, what we see so often is how people are complaining about trustees that are acting in their own interest, trustees that spend thousands of rands on the repair and maintenance on the outside of their units. But if another member then wants something repaired, then it's done in a spoeg and plak way, just as cheap as possible, because they don't want to spend the money in that regard. So choosing the right trustees, making sure that the budget is correct, those things absolutely, scrutinizing the financials of the previous years, making sure that trustees have spent money in accordance with that budget, and done so correctly as well. So that was more what I meant. So definitely agree with you. It is not a gripe session. It's definitely, this is the business of this body corporate, and we need to deal with the business of the body corporate, and we need to make sure. In terms of Section 7, the restrictions that are placed onto trustees, that is such an important part. And I see in meetings that the last 3 minutes is spent on that. Let's quickly have a look. What are the restrictions that we're placing on them? Oh, they can't spend more than 50,000 rand on a single item.
Yeah.
And then, okay, but your municipal bill is 150,000 rand per month. So must they now not pay it and go and get your permission every time they want to pay it? And then, oh, okay, right, no, okay. So if it's not the municipal bill, then on other stuff.
Yes,
so people don't really think, and they just come up with these random restrictions and directions at that moment, instead of going to think about it properly and then implement those things, because those things can be used as a mechanism to make sure that things are done in accordance with the legislation. I mean, I saw a note at the bottom here that says we haven't had an AGM in 4 years. A scheme that hasn't. I mean, how do you run a scheme if you don't have an AGM yearly? Zerlinda,
how do you pay bills? How do you pay bills? You don't have any money to pay bills because everything that has been raised is illegal. It's crazy. No,
Yeah,
ridiculous.
so trustees, in my opinion, trustees can raise the levy from the expiration of that first year to the next AGM by 10%. And that is it. There can't be a further raise in another year's time by 10% again, because you have raised it from the end of the financial year to the next AGM. So if you don't have an AGM, you don't have that right again, according to me. I don't know. What is your
No,
opinion?
100% agree. It's for that financial year. So
Correct.
as soon as that financial year is ended, it's you blown out of the water, and you can't actually spend from the budget because the budget has not been approved. You know, there's nothing to increase.
Then people call the special levies, Zerlinda. You know, they run out of money.
Don't even get me started on special levies.
Yeah, so I can't understand how. I mean, to me, that scheme is dysfunctional. There's absolutely no other way than to say that that scheme is dysfunctional, and how owners can remain in a scheme and not then take the action necessary to make sure that the scheme is compliant. I mean, go to CISOs. That is why Section 39 is there. So refer it in terms of 38. Ask for one of the orders in terms of 39. And I was reading through them this morning again, and you can ask that the trustees be directed to actually call the AGM and make sure that the AGM is being held. So get those orders against them and force them to do an AGM, because how else do you protect your asset?
I'd rather say go and get support of your fellow members, because it's going to be quicker to do that and take the ball in your own court and take control. And that's one of my bugbears. And you mentioned, the complaints about managing agents and trustees on that sectional title group. Every time I see a complaint, I mean, the trustee situation is very unique, but when I see a complaint against a managing agent, my blood boils and I want to say something on the group that's going to get me banned, so I keep quiet. The decision doesn't rest with the managing agent. It's with the body corporate. And the body corporate is not just the trustees, the body corporate is the member. So is each member. And if a body corporate doesn't have an annual general meeting for 4 years, to be quite honest, every single member is just as much to blame as the trustees, because you could have gotten 25% support and called the meeting and run the meeting. Yes, you might not have all the information that you need to run the annual general meeting, but you need to take control. There's so little that the trustees can actually take decisions on. The power really rests with the members. In this meeting of mine this morning, the portfolio managers were talking about the added burden on portfolio managers to know more and more and more because of AI. And I know both of you, Willie especially, you're super big on AI and teaching AI the right thing and all that fun stuff. But it's so dangerous to the people that want to hear the advice that they want to hear. Who is at fault? Whose responsibility is it? That they miss the point that the body corporate is theirs. You pointed out on the directives and the restrictions, and the nice thing, and Poena, I'll hand over to you. The nice thing about, professionalizing your meeting and using like MeetingPal, for example, is that you can actually work on the proper wording of the resolution with the members' input during the meeting, and it can be minuted properly, because if you place a restriction or a directive and you don't word it properly, it's pointless. You may as well not have even proposed it in the first place. Poena, I know you've done that for meetings that I've been in quite often. Like, okay, everyone, let's get the wording like properly done now.
I think it's super important, Zerlinda, and that's part of the problem with and I'm not promoting only online meetings. I do support hybrid meetings, but I do believe you need to have a mechanism of being able to draft a proper resolution and then present a proper worded voting card to the members. And this is where we find ourselves in a bit of a spot of bother. If you're only in a physical, voting cards that were pre-printed, and now all of a sudden we want to change the wording, then the oaks just scratch out and you get different wording and different interpretations. I thought we were voting on this, but I clearly misunderstood this, and so that it is important to have a proper worded voting card. And then again, I believe there are tools out there that allow you to do proper calculations and or wording of the voting cards. But in that case, you need to, unfortunately, you require some mechanism of having an electronic mechanism for those, even those that are present, to actually know exactly what you're presenting to them and what they are voting on. And on voting and the resolutions, there's also a trick that we need to understand. And when I say a trick, if we present a special resolution to a meeting and you give them 4 options to determine, let's say solar, and you've got to pick the 4 solar providers, you are going to have a split decision, and your likelihood of achieving 75% is just diminished by 4 times. I mean, it's really so you've got to think about how do you propose your resolutions, your wording to the resolutions. So it's far easier to have a resolution. Can we get approval to implement solar? And that is a special resolution. And we go through that process. And then we get to an ordinary resolution. Which vendor would you like? I mean, that's a far easier, it's a shootout and it's far easier. But again, the wording and the structure of the resolutions is important.
100%.
Absolutely. But can I also just jump in here regarding documentation? And it is something, and maybe we can start letting the cat out of the bag. What we're going to do at the new or at the next Let's Get Physical. Can I do that?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So we're actually going to have a proper AGM. So the whole training is going to be an AGM, and participants are going to be given the documentation that one would normally have at your AGM and so forth. And we're going to actually go through all of that and go dive deeper into what we're talking about today. I just saw a comment that virtual meetings are held so people don't have documentation, so they don't have to show stuff and so forth. And that's not true. Because at the end of the day, an AGM can't be held if you've not been furnished with this documentation prior to the meeting. So you actually must have this, because you must come prepared to that meeting. You should have had that documentation. You should have gone through the financials. You should have gone through the budget. You must look at your insurance value of your scheme, of your unit, the common property value, what is insured. So all those things must be made available to members prior to the meeting, so that they can come prepared to this meeting and understand exactly what's going on. I mean,
Yeah.
Poena mentioned earlier on about cash flow. And it's something that I've said over the last 5, 6, 7 years. I've been saying that in webinars: budget for cash flow. Don't budget just for income, because it doesn't help. You've got 30% of your scheme that are not paying levies, and you are raising a levy, but you know that 30% of these owners are not going to pay it. So you need to make sure that your cash flow is right as well. So then you will have to add provisions for non-payment, because at the end of the day, if you don't have cash, how do you run your scheme? So legal fees, nobody raises legal fees in their budgets, because now we're going to slap it on the debtor's account. Well, that doesn't work like that. So at the end of the day, you're going to sit without money to pay for legal, and then how do you collect? Then you don't have money to collect, because you can't just slap it onto the account, and now the scheme goes backwards because they didn't make provision for that.
Yeah. And the abuse, like Poena mentioned, of special levies. You know, you can't raise a special levy to fund a budget that hasn't been prepared correctly. Special levies are supposed to be for unique, once-off, emergency, unplanned, unbudgeted, unthought of events. It's
that can't wait.
That can't wait. You can't rely on it. You know. And we see way too often that special levies get abused in that situation. And you know, Willie, you're in the financial game and the lending game. I mean, it's they don't take care of the levy situation. They need the funds. They have to look out to external service providers and all those fun things. It's very dangerous not to prepare and do things properly.
And then obviously what's also important in Zerlinda, I think this is where you guys at TVDM comes in. where one looks at not only at AGMs, but general meetings in general. So your special general meetings where you want to amend those rules and those sort of things. And that is also so important for schemes to make sure that those rules are correct and that they've done stuff in a way that they can actually manage the scheme properly and not just cut people's electricity off without having a rule in place and then get a spoliation order against them and a cost order, and the scheme has now paid 50,000 Rand because they were taken to court on application and they lost the matter and they must pay for that. So you guys are out there, you're looking at those rules, you're building the rules in such a way that schemes are protected because that's your expertise, that's what you guys do.
Yeah, we try, that's for sure. The thing that I get really annoyed at sometimes as well is and Poena, this goes to what you guys do, is the preparation for a meeting. And you mentioned like the owners must go through the documents, they must go through the financials and all that fun stuff. I remember going to meetings, when meetings were more physical than they were hybrid and online. And the first time the person literally opens the envelope that the AGM pack comes in is at the meeting. You see them walking into the meeting with the envelope as it arrived at their unit or at their post office or whatever it might be. And they then use the excuse of, oh, I didn't have an opportunity to read this, or I don't understand it. That's what the notice period is for. Whenever I go to meetings and people don't want to approve something because they feel that it hasn't been properly considered or they haven't at the time, I'm like, the Act gives you 14 days or 30 days and an HA 21 days, whatever it might be. And if you don't choose to utilize that time wisely, then I can't help you. And if that document isn't sent out in time or not sent out at all, the repercussion is that the meeting is invalid. The resolution is invalid. I've gone to many meetings where the members, as they enter the room and sign in, the AGM, the budget, is shared for the first time. I mean, how can that happen? Then you have an excuse to say, I'm not prepared, I'm not able to read it. And then something else, people say, oh, I'm not a financial person, I don't understand the financials, I don't understand the budget. But then you can ask questions. I think there was actually a comment about what is our view on raising questions and stuff like that at the AGM. I know a lot of my managing agent colleagues like to say, if you haven't raised the question 24 hours or 48 hours before, we're not going to deal with it at the AGM because we don't have the opportunity to prepare, which is a fair enough statement. But very often the questions that are raised, it is possible to have an answer, or maybe an undertaking that it'll be looked into and answered maybe in the minutes or in a correspondence afterwards, or maybe it's important enough that maybe now's not a good time to have the annual general meeting and we have to go back to the drawing board type of thing. But Poena, for meeting Paul again, it sort of forces members to prepare because they have to sign in, they have to get the details to log in and all that fun stuff. So it's actually good, it forces that.
Yeah, and what's interesting, you just mentioned the not enough time. We see this quite often. We've been asked by CSOS to include if you vote on a special resolution and you vote no, what's the reason why you're voting no? And number one, not enough time. So, I mean, we've given you 30 days notice. We send out the documents 30 days in advance. There's not enough time. So it's interesting to see the owners, in terms of, and this again, I don't think owners understand is directly attached to the value of the property that they're trying to the asset that they're trying to protect. So they divorce themselves from, I live here, and actually it's a massive asset that I need to protect. And to that, owners don't come prepared, and I see quite a number of comments where people just pitch to the meeting, they've not received the pack, or they've received the pack, but they're literally opening up in the meeting. I've had an interesting one the other day, a very well established community in Cape Town. I mean, the properties are selling from 17 to 70 million. And the guy pitches and says, so what's this meeting all about? I go, okay, well.
Yeah, oh dear, it happens way too often.
We we can be lucky that these people are at least at the meetings.
Mm.
I cannot tell you how schemes struggle to get a quorum.
Mm.
We would not lend money to a scheme unless they've gone through the process, they had a special general meeting, and they've requested permission from the owners, and we have a special resolution to that effect. I cannot tell you how many schemes then have to have that follow-up meeting because there's no quorum. And people they're not even interested in attending. And when I was managing schemes years back, I had the same problem with my AGMs as well. People just don't come, they don't pitch up. It's just, they don't worry. And then there's a complaint afterwards, and they're not happy about what's happening. But the apathy to attend is just enormous. It's just crazy. You can't believe it.
Yeah.
You
I was
actually-
hoping, sorry, off you go, Poena.
No, I was just about to say, Zerlinda, you can always see when a scheme has got lots of troubles, then everybody is there. If the scheme is well run, it's only 2 or 3 people that pitch.
Yeah, we always used to, I mean, it came to such a point, and I don't know if it's as bad anymore with the ability to have hybrid meetings and things like that. But our managing agents, our portfolio managers that we work with, they would actually, as a matter of course, book the next week, you know, the venue, the time, the date, because they know that the meeting is going to have to stand adjourned. And it's really bad that most of, at least in my experience, whenever we go to an adjourned meeting, there's even less people at the adjourned meeting. It's crazy. I once went to a meeting where it was just myself and the managing agent, not even the trustees rocked up. I was like, it was unreal. Obviously, we didn't even, you know, we couldn't even do anything because we both weren't owners, but I was shocked that not even the trustees attend, and it happens all the time. I mean, I can use myself as an example. The year that I left my scheme as a trustee, I didn't attend the annual general meeting. I sent a proxy, and that was wrong of me. I should have been there to, you know, to deal with my owners. Whenever I go to a meeting, if I'm asked to chair it, and Poena, I don't know if you guys do the same, I want the trustees to sit up front. I want the trustees to engage with the owners. I don't want the trustees to be sitting in the back row or not in attendance. You know, it's not the managing agents building. It's the trustees are the ones that have to respond to the owners. And with hybrid meetings, online meetings, I was really hoping that attendance was going to skyrocket, but it doesn't. We were chatting this morning, and Poena, you can tell me if it's technologically possible or not, but the PMs were complaining about all people's like AIs that join the meeting, like someone's pilot has joined the meeting or someone's note taker has joined the meeting. And we're talking about the recordings of the meeting. And I said, I think the other day when we were having our Let's Get Physical meeting, Philip's note taker attended the meeting, but I don't think Philip attended the meeting. So like in his physical absence, his AI was taking notes for him. And how would we, not in the know that that owner is actually not even in attendance, which could have an effect on our quorum? Like that blew my mind.
Yeah, I think to that point, what we've seen and on the AI note takers, I think there's also something, and I saw the question about Poppy, and I do believe that we need to solve Poppy within this sectional title space as well. But irrespective of that, there was a court case, not a court case, somebody from one of the big banks where I also consult in was dismissed because he brought in his AI reader. Unfortunately, the AI readers, the servers are all based outside of the country, and technically you're in breach of Poppy in terms of cross-border processing. So it was a total disaster. The legal guys literally fired the guy because of his AI joining the meeting. He was in the meeting himself, but the AI, all the notes were sent outside of South Africa. So that is another issue to be solved.
Yeah, Poppy is definitely a huge issue in the industry. And my attitude on it is that one must open as much as possible. The more you are transparent, the less you have problems in your scheme, more people can engage, they know what's going on. in the scheme. They can see invoices. They understand what is being done. They see bank statements. I have no problem in disclosing who the debtors are. I think owners are entitled to that. They must know who's in arrears. They're all in this together, so they're entitled to know that. They're entitled to be able to take legal action on behalf of the scheme if the scheme is not doing what it should do. The Act allows for that. So how can you do that unless you know what is going on? So to me, the more open and transparent things are, at the end of the day, that resolves lots of issues. Otherwise, where people are hiding stuff, even if let's not use the word hiding, where people are not disclosing stuff, one gets the idea that something is amiss, even if it's not. And then those trustees get attacked and they get accused, and so forth. Not that it doesn't happen, and not that we don't see that stuff isn't done properly, but if it's open and transparent, it's the best way to do it.
I must say, perhaps, and Zerlinda, you mentioned it, I'm the financial trustee and the financial and compliance trustee. So two things, I also share everything, make everything transparent, because I believe that it's not my money, it's not my scheme. I'm literally looking after everybody's interest, and it's their money. The interesting result of that is that we never have anybody that's not, all our owners are paid in advance, 3 months in advance. So, and our maintenance fund is fully subscribed. If in fact we're running a new project, it's 150% subscribed. So it's just by everybody knowing what's going on in the scheme, what the financial position is. And to your point, Willie, if somebody is late, I mean, somebody will phone you and say, hey, what's happening here? Come, you know. So I know name and shame is a big problem, and that's part of the culture of our complex, and you've got to look at and be aware of the cultures within the scheme. But I do also believe that it should be transparent. It is collectively our money, it's collectively our business that we need to drive. It's a business, and you're part of the business, you're a shareholder in the business. You got to drive it and make sure that the business maintains momentum and can sustain itself.
Yeah, as long as that information is not being used to sell Tupperware or insurance or whatever, then you are entitled to that, because you are dealing with the matters of the scheme, and as such, POPI is not applicable. So, and you're entitled to that, and you are a member, and you're entitled to that information.
100%.
And I think the court matter where Dylan and them were involved. I'm forgetting the name now. Old age is the brain doesn't work that quickly.
Nothing to do with old age.
But the point is that the court was very clear that people are entitled to all of the information. And I know that CSOS says, no, you need to get permission and so forth. And I think they are actually doing the industry a disservice by saying these things. And I think things should be open, and transparent always. Much easier.
I was speaking to the PMs about it today as well. I think the CSOS is looking at access to body corporate records only insofar as it relates to contact information. And it goes so much further than that, you know, so you can't hide behind POPI for access to body corporate records when it's for a legitimate purpose. And I was saying to them that, you know, the information officer, whoever that person is, has actually got a heck of a job, because they need to determine whether or not the request is in terms of the SDSMA, that the person requesting it has got a valid reason to request it, and all those fun things. But at the end of the day, the information is there and people are entitled to it, even contact information. And, you know, the CSOS approach is get their permission. Alternatively, you send your details to everyone else, and if they want to speak to you, they will contact you. And owner apathy is just way too switched on for that. It's ridiculous. So we have to, stop trying to hide behind Poppy and really look at what people are wanting to access and why. Yes, you do get the owner that is irritated because their dog application wasn't accepted, and now they're wanting trustee minutes from the last 20 years to see how many dogs previously were accepted and all those fun things, which obviously is legitimate for certain people. But I think in the majority of the cases, the request is legitimate.
I mean, look at that, a complex in Pretoria where the financial statements are not being given. I mean, that's part of your AGM. It has to, it's open to everybody. So I don't know. I can't understand why we're going down this route. At the end of the day, you're destroying value in your scheme because people will stop paying levies. People will be upset. And at the end of the day, it destroys the value of your scheme. That's what we see. I mean, we sit where people are coming to lend money or borrow money, or where we purchase the outstanding debtors. And those schemes are already, they have so much problems already because the money is not there, that they must do that. And the next step is administration. And that is why there's an administration business like Confiance Administrative Solutions, because that's the next step there. So it's just absolutely mind-blowing, and that people don't want to give people their information. It's their information. It's they're part of that scheme. They're entitled to that. Managing agents that don't want to give information to the trustees. I mean, on what
the time? Like that's insane, absolutely insane.
I mean, they're not even, they're a servant. They serve the scheme, and then they tell the scheme, we're not going to give you your information. It's just.
I think the Sectional Titles Act had it right with that master and servant relationship, but unfortunately, a lot of the time it was abused, and the emphasis was placed on the contractual relationship. But what we're also seeing a lot of is when managing agents are terminated and not handing over the records of the body corporates. I mean, back in the day, I took over a scheme with 0 records, and we had to recreate everything from scratch. It's not impossible, but surely a scheme should never be in that situation. It's the body corporate's records, and the body corporate is every single member. And of course, the trustees have liability and fiduciary responsibility, which means that if they need to see what's being paid, what's not being paid, what's the financial position, it must be made available to them. You can't hold them accountable if the information is not being provided to them.
So I see people are saying, what should we do if this is our situation? Section 39 of the CSOS Act gives you a path. So you can apply at CSOS and you can get an order. Now we know that CSOS is not necessarily going to give that order. If you're then not happy, then you have to take that on the review. So you will have to go to the High Court. And unfortunately, that's going to cost a fortune. Or alternatively, you can immediately start by going to court and say, I want this information, and get a court order. And I think the precedent that is there already, if people want to refuse stuff outside that order, they're going to have a problem at the end of the day. Cost orders, we're going to start seeing special cost orders against trustees and managing agents in their personal capacity, having to pay the legal costs. But it is costly. The other day I was saying, I mean, an opposed application will probably cost you 120, 150,000 rand. So that's unfortunately the situation. So it does make it difficult for people to go that route. And get that information that they're entitled to, but lots of people won't spend that money because it's just too difficult or too expensive to do that. So we have to change the legislation. So I think you and Marina and we all had a chat last week about the rules committee or the sectional title committee, where we are going to try and get stuff changed there. We hope that that can make a difference, and we can get some clarity on these things.
Yeah, the advisory council. I think
The
that's
advisory council,
yeah. It's sad though that there isn't more participation though. You know, it's almost as though the people that are responsible for the implementation of changes to the legislation are not on a first-hand basis experiencing, you know, what we experience on a daily basis of what parts of the legislation need to change. Everything from like AGM format to how resolutions are determined, you know, like unanimous resolutions, quorum, all those fun things. It's a lot that we pick up in practice. You know, I always tell my team, and I know that you guys do it all the time as well with your blog posts and everything that you do, is when you encounter a problem, immediately, you know, make a note that that is something that needs to change, or that that's something that needs to be worked on, or that a solution to that needs to be found. Because when the time comes for us to make our comment, it goes by in, you know, a wink. I remember when the public participations were held for the STSMA, my colleague went off to one of the sessions with this massive folder that she had prepared of all proposed amendments. And I remember when the legislation came out, she said like one thing that they suggested was actually looked at. Everything else was just, you know, pushed aside. And that's really, really sad. So we do have to become involved in it, you know, and we need the support of the industry to be able to do so. There was a comment on that sectional title group the other day where, you know, somebody was saying that it's up to the attorneys in the industry to go and take a matter to court to, you know, get an answer to something here. And
I remember.
Yeah, you saw, and it's not. We can't do anything without instructions. It's up to a body corporate to actually challenge a decision. And because of those fees that you're quoting, I mean, it's sometimes impossible for schemes to do that. But I mean, we're all chomping at the bit to go and take something further, but we can't just, you know, us institute a matter and take it further. The same with CSOS as well, is that we're not the affected parties or the interested parties. It's up to the people that are listening. It's the owners and the trustees, the managing agents that are the ones that can actually make a change.
Absolutely. That doesn't mean that we're not trying.
No.
But I mean,
you guys more than most.
No, and you as well. I mean, you and I got the Shadow Minister of Human Settlements.
Feels like a lifetime ago.
It feels like a lifetime ago, and we went to CSOS and we took 40 or something changes that we suggested, and unfortunately, nothing of that actually came through. Nothing was done towards that. But we can't stop. We can't stop talking about it. We can't stop changing that. Just one other thing that I want to mention, Lauren is giving me a note here, and she says, remind people you've got the AGM pack on the website. So under our free resources, there is a proper AGM pack, how an AGM should look, what should be in there, and so forth. So for those that don't know and that don't get financials even at the AGMs and it's hidden from them, there is a pack that you can go and have a look on under the free resources, what should be in there. Yeah, Poena, some comments from you.
No, I think it's insightful, but I think to your point, there are some things that we need to drive, and as it's a maturity process, as we all learn from the Act and the implementation and the actual execution of the Act, we all learn from that, and I think that's where, unfortunately, government officials are not necessarily prone to change. And don't work on a performance or a process improvement process, but that's typically what we should do, and that's where the value that you guys are doing are important. As we implement, we need to drive it. What I also see in practice is there's lots of people that are unfortunately or fortunately interpreting the Act differently, and I think there should be more clarity on certain interpretations. I mean, I was looking at one of the comments, and I always, I don't have an answer to this. Perhaps you guys can help me. So the 10% increase, is that on the administrative or on the, does it include the reserve fund?
It's the budgets, so it's both.
Okay, so is it 10% total or 10% for this fund and for that fund?
10% total. because you pay one contribution. It's just divided into a administrative split and a reserve split. I mean, Willie, that's how you guys do it as well, not so?
That's how we do it, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm facetious about it because
Yeah, not at 20%.
Well, now remember, on the one hand, I've now depleted my reserve fund, and I must, in terms of the act, charge 15%. Boom, okay, there I go. And then on this side, I go 10%. Now I'm already on 25%.
Yeah. I get confused at some AGM, say, when the people throw out the levy percentages, and then the trustees are like, oh no, it's only a 6 point whatever percentage. And then someone smart in the room does a mathematical equation. I'm like, actually, he's right. It is 20 something percent or 30 something percent.
But that's not really relevant, the percentages. I mean, the 10% is really just that period in between.
Yeah.
So from the end of the financial year until the next AGM is done. So there was a question earlier on. So the moment that financial year comes to an end, you can then implement that additional 10%. And that makes sure that when you're actually going to have your AGM, that you're not going to have to raise by 25 or 35%, because you need to now make provisions until the next financial year. And if you've left out 5, 6, 7, 8 months, because we see schemes having AGMs 8 months, 9 months down the road, then you didn't have that increase and you are behind with everything. And then they have to levy that huge levy increases to make up for that, where that 10% actually gives you the ability to at least stay in touch with your expenses. Well, hopefully so. But the way that Eskom is going, not necessarily, eh?
There's a lot of things that are out of the trustees' control, unfortunately. It works that way. I see that there were a couple of comments about our Let's Get Physical event and the next dates and things. I don't know if Lauren's got those dates on hand, but we're starting with Cape Town next week. So the 5th of March. It's going to be at the Century City Clubhouse on the 5th at 8 o'clock until about 1:30. Poena is going to be our chairperson, and Meeting Pal is going to be our voting platform and sending out the notices and all those fun things. And everybody has to be on their toes because we haven't done everything correctly. So it would be interesting to see who picks up what's wrong and what hasn't been sent when it was supposed to be sent and all those fun things. And Willie, I know that you guys are going to be talking a lot about your service offering from a levy finance perspective, as well as arbitration. I personally have a very positive view on arbitration. I mean, you just have to talk to your guys' team at Confiance once to know that it is such a benefit for a body corporate when it is impossible for it to be managed, and financially it would be better suited and all those fun things. I don't know, does Lauren have the other dates? I think Lauren is next, or Joburg's next.
Yeah, so what I'll actually do, I'm going to send out the mailer with the recording as well as the resources and that Billy mentioned just now. I'll send out the Cape Town information and the other dates. So I'll pop that out before the end of tomorrow.
I see Michael Addison has also popped on the chat. Cool.
Thanks, Mike. So Michael's also going to be there, and we're also going to deal with insurance. You've cut me now. Hello?
No, we can hear you. We can hear
you. Okay, perfect. So he's going to deal with insurance at that AGM. So definitely a worthwhile opportunity to learn how to run a AGM properly. So yeah. It's not going to be streamed or available online. That's why it's called Let's Get Physical. We are trying to do things in a physical manner, where we meet you guys and see you face to face, and have the opportunity to interact with you guys and answer questions that you might have.
Oh, but let's be honest, guys. It is more for us to see each other again and talk a little bit of nonsense, So.
Zerlinda, Poena, thank you so much. I think we're running out of time. Really appreciate this chat. We're going to send out the notes. It's just very cryptic notes of what we were discussing, and will be the result if you don't take part in these meetings. And at the end of the day, it will lead to schemes that are dysfunctional, and we don't want to see that. We want to see flourishing schemes in South Africa. So let's get that sorted out in South Africa. Let's be transparent. Let's learn. Let's look at resources that are available, and move forward and have fantastic schemes for people to live in.
100%. Thank you so much, guys.
Regarding the questions, what we're going to do is Lauren's going to make copies of all of that, and it's going to be included then in the whole answer. So we will answer as much as possible in respect of that. I'll get our compliance team and Zerlinda and Poena and so forth to assist with that as well.
100%. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate this morning.
Lekker dagie. Bye.
And I'll see you guys next week in Cape Town.
Yay! All right, guys. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
We are.